Hi students, welcome to Infinity Learning Space Business Capstone module. So, starting from where we stopped the lesson last time, if you remember, we were talking about operations management. And in the last video, we looked at a very brief intro into operations management. And so, today, we are going to go over with the rest of the lesson. So like I mentioned, we looked at operations management, and today we're going to look at what are the main responsibilities or objectives of an operations manager. Operations flow එකේ අපේ factory flow එකේ ඉන්න manager කෙනෙක්ගේ මොනවාද ප්‍රධාන වගකීම් තමයි අද අපි ඉස්සෙල්ලාම ඉගෙන ගන්න යන්නේ. So අපි මේ වගකීම් වලින් ගත්තොත් දෙකක් නෙමෙයි අපිට ගොඩාක් වගකීම් තියෙනවා, but there are two main responsibilities, and that is, the first is efficiency enhancement, කාර්යක්ෂමතාවය වැඩි කිරීම, and also strategic alignment. අපේ business එකේ තියෙන plan එකට උපාය මාර්ගයට align කරන්නේ කොහොමද, නැත්නම් ඒකත් එක්ක සම්බන්ධ කරන්නේ කොහොමද අපේ day-to-day operations කියන එක. So මේ දෙක තමයි operations manager කෙනෙක්ගේ main responsibilities. So if we look at efficiency enhancement, efficiency කියන්නේ කාර්යක්ෂමතාවය. How we can do something that we do better. අපි කොහොමද දෙයක් කරනවට වඩා හොඳට කරන්නේ. නිෂ්පාදන කරන process එක නැත්නම් production process එකේ කරන දේ how can we do it with less waste. අපෙන් අමුද්‍රව්‍ය එළියට යනවා නම් ඒව නාස්ති වෙනවා නම් ඒක අඩු කරලා අපි කරන්නේ කොහොමද? එහෙම නැත්නම් how to do it at a less cost. තියෙනවට වඩා cost එක අඩුවෙන් අපි ඒක කරන්නේ කොහොමද? So by becoming more efficient, අපේ කාර්යක්ෂමතාවය වැඩි කිරීමෙන් we can become more profitable. අපේ company එකේ තියෙන profits අපිට වැඩි කරගන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේම profits වැඩි කරගන්නවත් එක්කම අපිට පුළුවන් අපේ competitiveness එක අපි කොහොමද අපේ competitors ලත් එක්ක compete කරන්නේ, අපේ products කොහොමද ඒගොල්ලන්ට වඩා හොඳ වෙන්නේ කියන එකත් වැඩි කරගන්න. So we will be able to have a stronger competitive positioning. So the operations manager have a direct responsibility වගකීමක් තියෙනවා efficiency එක වැඩි කරන්න production flow එකේ, factory flow එකේ. Apart from that, දෙවෙනි main responsibility එක තමයි to strategically align. මම ඉස්සෙල්ලා කිව්වා වගේ අපේ operations process එක අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම align වෙන්න ඕනේ අපේ business එකේ strategy එකට. අපි ඒක 3 levels වලින් කලින් lesson එකේ දැක්කා. So මෙතන අපි කතා කරන්නේ department එකේ වෙන day to day activities, එදිනෙදා වෙන activities අපි බලන්න ඕනේ අපේ company එකේ long term strategy එකත් එක්ක align වෙනවද කියලා. For instance, if you're the operations manager and you have to make a decision, for instance, let's say අද ඔයගොල්ලෝගේ අද order එකක් වැඩිපුර ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා. So to fulfill this order, you might have to make the workers work a bit more late. ඔයාට overtime ගෙවන්න නැතුව සමහරට වැඩ කරන්න සිද්ධ වෙයි. But you know, in your company, the strategy tells that we should treat our people and culture very well. Strategy එකේම තියෙනවා we have to be a very people friendly, a very supportive culture. So එහෙම strategy එකක් තියෙද්දී operations manager cannot make the people work overtime without OT or anything. So that's why we say when it comes to the operations flow, the manager must ensure that the day-to-day operations, whatever the daily decisions he has to make, is aligned with the strategy. So, are these the only two responsibilities that an operations manager have? No. So, beyond this, there are other responsibilities as well. තවත් වගකීම් තියෙනවා අපිට operations manager කෙනෙක් වුණාම අපේ පැත්තෙන් වෙන්න ඕනේ. So there, the first is අපි වැඩ කරන facility එක, දැන් අපි ගත්තොත් goods manufacturing plant එකක් අපි කතා කරන්නේ physical නිෂ්පාදනයක් ගැන නම් they need to make sure that the facility location and space is utilized. මොකද්ද මේ utilized කියන්නේ? අපිට දීලා තියෙන ඉඩ ප්‍රමාණය, ඒක warehouse එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, factory එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකෙන් අපි උපරිම භාවිතය, ප්‍රයෝජනය ගන්නවා කියන එක. Because now, for instance, let's take, we have a factory which is about very big, a lot of square feet, but මේකෙන් භාගයක්ම අපි නිකන් ඔහේ goods store කරලා දාලා තියෙනවා. And ඒ අතින් අනිත් පැත්තෙන් අපිට production එක දෙන්න පුළුවන් plan කරනට වඩා අඩුවෙන්. So අපි අර ඉතුරු භාගෙත් පාවිච්චි කරා නම් අපේ production process එකට to increase the production, then we can increase our output. So මොකද්ද මේ utilization කියන්නේ? අපිට හම්බෙලා තියෙන resources නැත්නම් space ඉඩ ප්‍රමාණයෙන් maximum use එක උපරිම ප්‍රයෝජනය ගන්න ඕනේ. So an operations manager should take decisions to make sure that this happens. And next, they need to define and implement the operations strategy. අපි කතා කර operations strategy එකක් ගැන. So ඒගොල්ලෝ ඒක මොකක්ද කියලා define කරන්න ඕනේ and they have to implement it. Just because they say okay, අපේ strategy එක තමයි to align to the profitability, to hit this much of output with this much of quality. No, just because they say it doesn't mean that it'll happen. They have to make sure they implement it. If they say or if they define their strategy saying we will have 100% quality of every item that goes out of the factory, ඒගොල්ලෝ කියනවා 100% quality achieve කරපු items විතරයි අපි factory එකකින් එළියට දෙන්නේ කියලා. They have to make sure that they monitor their quality at the end of every production line. ඒගොල්ලෝ බලන්න ඕනේ ඒගොල්ලෝගේ හැම item එකක්ම මේ quality control එකට ඒ standard එකට hit වෙනවද කියලා. So they have to implement it. They have to take the necessary steps to make sure it's happening. So ඒකත් ඒගොල්ලෝගේ වගකීම් වලින් එකක්. And then to manage and control inventory. So we saw for certain types of production, especially goods production, there was inventory. But for the other type, especially for service, there wasn't much of an inventory, but there still was some type of inventory. Even if it's a hospital you take, which provides mostly a service, there are certain types of inventory that they have to store and keep. It could be from medicine, it could be from medical equipment, the tools that they use in certain surgeries, injections, anything. So an operations manager who is responsible for the operational process should make sure that they manage කළමනාකරණය කරනවා and control. අපි ගාව තියෙනවා හොඳට පරිස්සමෙන් භාවිතා කරනවාද කියලා බලන්න. So that falls under the operations manager's responsibility. Now imagine you're working in a factory. You're the operations manager. You know this month you have this order. ඔයාට order book එකේ මේ order එක වැටලා තියෙනවා for let's say අපි t-shirts ගත්තොත් apparel company එකක් ගත්තොත් for 100,000 t-shirts. This is there in your order book. So now you need to make sure ඔයාගේ තමයි වගකීම මේ 100,000 order එක එළියට දාන්න. ඔයාට ඒක කරන්න you need to make sure the necessary fabric is there in your warehouse. Orders are placed. The delivery is happening. And apart from fabrics, there are many other things. That there are people to fill up your capacity. ඔයාට ඕනේ ප්‍රමාණයට මිනිස්සු ඉන්නවට වැඩ කරන්න. So you have to make sure that the inventory is in place. So that is also another responsibility. Next is to enhance වැඩි දියුණු කරන්න operational productivity. මොකද්ද මේ productivity කියන්නේ? අපි කරන production එක හොඳටම නැත්තම් අපි ඉක්මනටම කරනවාද කියලා බලන එක නැත්තම් ඒක වැඩි දියුණු කරන එකත් operations manager කෙනෙක්ගේ වගකීමක්. That is also one of their responsibilities. So let's take an example. For instance, let's say, again, the same example of an apparel factory. You have a production line. එක production line එකක් තියෙනවා. ඔයගොල්ලෝ apparel factory එකක් දැකලා තියෙනවා නම් දැකලා ඇති මෙහෙම පොලිමට there are workers or the people who sit on machines and they do their work. So if you start at the beginning of the line එකේ මුලට එන්න පුළුවන් අපිට රෙදි කෑල්ලක් කපපු, and then there might be a finished or a properly stitched t-shirt or a garment. So now as an operations manager, you have to see, you have to check, okay, lamai කීදෙනෙක් දැම්මොත්, workers ලා කීදෙනෙක් දැම්මොත්ද මට හොඳම productivity ඉක්මනට මේක මහල එළියට දාන්න පුළුවන්. And is it just workers or do I need a machine or some sort of tool in the production line? So it's your responsibility to make sure that you identify how to increase the productivity. කොහොමද අපි ඉක්මනට මේක produce කරන්නේ and හොඳටම produce කරන්නේ කියලා බලලා ඒක enhance වැඩි දියුණු කරන්නේ කොහොමද කියලා බලන එක. Apart from that, you need to increase your response time. මොකද මේ response time කියන්නේ? So you all know operations flow එකේ වෙන ඕනම දෙයක් at the end of the day will reach our customer. That's the end objective, to make sure that we give a good or a service to our customer. So if once the good reaches to the customer and customer gives some feedback, okay, maybe from a survey or something, the company realize maybe for this t-shirt people don't like this color, may fabric texture they don't like this print. So as an operations manager, you need to be able to improve your response time. What does this mean? That means you need to be able to quickly respond or deliver what the customer requests. If the customer says that they don't like this fabric, you need to be able to make sure you order a different kind of fabric, probably from the supplier. Supplier ge අපි වෙන ජාතිය fabric එකක් ගන්නවා. Maybe ඒගොල්ලෝ cotton වලට කැමති. And also you make sure that ඔයාගේ factory flow එකේ ඒක මහන්න ඔයාට skill එක තියෙනවා, ඔයාට machinery එක තියෙනවා, and then you have the necessary equipment. So as an operations manager, you need to be able to do it very quickly and you have to be flexible. Next is to develop people and teams. Again, same kind of example. You manage, let's say, a factory floor. You know what you are producing, you know what needs to come in, you know all of that. But without the people or the teams, you cannot perform it. I mean, very hardly there are factory floors which are fully automated. 100% automation, I don't think we have reached yet. There might be some involvement. There might be at least 2 or 3 people to handle machinery. So we need to be able to manage them. We need to first identify. ඉස්ලාම් ප්ලෑන් කරන්න ඕනේ. මොකක්ද අපිට මේ ප්‍රොඩක්ෂන් එක මේ වෙලාවට කරන්න ඕන වෙන ස්කිල් එක. මොන ජාතිය කාඩ් එකක්ද අපිට ඕනේ. මොන ජාතිය ස්කිල්ස් ද ඒගොල්ලන්ට තියෙන්න ඕනේ. When we are recruiting, we have to see අපි බලන්න ඕනේ මේගොල්ලන්ගේ මොනවාද ඕනේ qualifications, මොන හරි prerequisite skills තියෙනවද? We need to check that. And then what sort of skills do they need to be developed here? Job එකට ආවට පස්සේ මොන වගේ learnings ද අපි දෙන්න ඕනේ, මොන වගේ development programs ද අපි ඒගොල්ලන්ට implement කරන්න ඕනේ. So you have to plan that. And you have to make sure that it keeps happening continuously. දිගට මේක වෙන අපිට වෙන වෙන orders ජාති එනකොට ඒකට ගැලපෙන විදිහට skill එක train කරන්න, develop කරන්න operations manager ගේ තවත් responsibility එකක්. Then to manage quality, like I mentioned. In a production process, quality control is very important. Onama product එකක් ගන්න ගියොත් in the day-to-day world, you and I as customers, we look at the quality, right? How good the product looks. Now even when it comes to something small like buying a bottle of eau de cologne, we check, මොකේද වැඩිපුරම තියෙන්නේ, ඇයි මේ සමහර ඒවා අඩු. So that's also part of quality. So since customers are very concerned about quality, at the operational flow level itself, there needs to be proper quality control. අපි promise කරලා තියෙන quality එක අපි deliver කරනවාද කියලා බලන්න ඕනේ. So that may be අපි wastage මොන හරි තියෙනවා නම් ඒව අඩු කරන්න ඕනේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් මොන හරි defects තියෙනවා නම් ඒව identify කරලා ඒව remove කරන්න ඕනේ. And also they need to make sure that they do it at a very cost efficient way. ඉතින්කෝ අපි මහාන ඇඳුමේ මොන හරි පොඩි දෙයක් තියෙනවා වැරදි and then they throw it out. So by the time we end the production, half of it might have gone in waste. ඇයි අපි පොඩි defects වලට ඒව විසික් කරලා ඒව අයින් කරලා. So that can't happen. They have to make sure that quality control happens in a very cost efficient manner. And finally, to improve customer service. So this is connected to how easily we can respond to customer requirements. අපිට customer requirements වලට ඕනෙ විදිහට cater කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් in a timely manner, then that will definitely improve customer service. So ඒකත් එක්ක අපි ඊළඟට යනවා operations managers responsibility matrix කියලා. So මේ matrix කියන්නේ වෙන මොකුත්ම නෙමෙයි, ලොකු දෙයක් නෙමෙයි. අපි අර ඉගෙන ගත්ත responsibilities operations manager කෙනෙක්ගේ වගකීම් අපි දානවා to a more standard table or a format where across key areas අපිට එදිනදා ජොබ් එකේ කරන්න තියෙන විවිධ areas වලට අපි කඩලා අපි බලන ඒවා කොහොමද එක එක companies වල implement වෙන්නේ කියලා. So මෙතන අපි areas අරන් ඉන්නවා planning, quality, අපි මේ කතා කර responsibility එකක් විදිහට, cost management, කොහොමද අපි lowest possible cost එකෙන් අපේ production process එක කරන්නේ, and then supply chain management, මෙතන තමයි අපි inventory management එක බලන්නේ, process improvement, අපි නිෂ්පාදනය කරන process එකේ අපිට enhance කරන්න වැඩි දියුණු කරන්න මොනවද තියෙන්නේ, resource allocation, අපි කොහොමද අපේ people, machinery allocate කරන්නේ to achieve the highest profitability or the lowest cost. ඒ objectives වලට අනුව අපි කොහොමද අපේ workers, machines, අපේ space එක use කරන්න කියන එකත් ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ responsibility එක. And then performance monitoring, අපි මිනිස්සුන් allocate කරලා විතරක් මදි. workforce එක අපි ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ performance එක monitor කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒගොල්ලෝ අපිට ඕනේ විදිහට අපි skills develop කරාට පස්සෙත් අපිට ඕනේ target එකට යනවද? එහෙම නැත්නම් ඒගොල්ලෝ ඒකට තාම there is a variance. So ඒක ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ responsibility එකක් and risk management. So across these main areas we can categorize an operations manager's responsibility. So අපි high level ඉගෙන ගත්ත මොන જાතිය responsibilities ද කියලා. ඒකත් එක්ක අපි බලනවා කොහොමද physical goods manufacture කරද්දී operations manager කෙනෙක්ගේ responsibilities change වෙන්නේ, and also service sector එකේ production එකකදී කොහොමද operations manager කෙනෙක්ගේ responsibilities වෙනස් වෙන්නේ. So I've given this, I've taken these two examples. So physical goods වලට අපි අරන් තියෙනවා Toyota, a very well known brand, Japanese car manufacturing brand, and also a design house called IDEO. So ඒගොල්ලෝ customer ට ඕන විදිහට designs කරනවා. So that's their business model. Okay, let's take something very easy to understand. First, let's take quality. Now, when you take a production flow, especially where there is a physical good coming out of the product, it's easy, right? You have time to properly analyze or properly look at the product and identify whether there are defects. ඒ වෙලාවේ ඔයාට ඒ product එක production process එක ඉවරුණාට පස්සේ ඔයාලට trials කරලා බලන්න පුළුවන් මොන හරි defects තියෙනවද, brakes වැඩ කරනවද, are the airbags working. So that's possible for a physical good. So there you can have inspections, defect tracking and Kaizen methods to make sure that the vehicles meet the quality and the safety standard. But if we take a service sector, service එකක් දෙන company එකක් ගත්තොත්, especially මේ design house එක වගේ, ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ final product එකක් ඒගොල්ලන්ට අතට අරන් බලන්න බෑ කරලා මොනවද defects, මොනවද මේකේ තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න කියලා. So how can they control their quality? It is through reviews. නැත්නම් ඒගොල්ලෝ surveys වලින් feedbacks ගන්නවා ඇති client ගේ. And also they might try to make sure ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ මොකක් හරි හැම campaign එකම එකේම ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ brand එක consistently apply වෙනවද කියලා. So they cannot physically check for any defects, but they have to make sure that they do control their quality through reviews and feedback. And let's take another one. Another easy example. So you all can read through all of this and understand against each and every responsibility කොහොමද ඒක physical goods manufacturing scenario එකයි service sector එකේ scenario එකයි වෙනස් වෙන්නේ කියලා. Okay. දැන් අපි බලමු supply chain management. අපි inventory ගැන කතා කරපු තැන. So obviously physical goods එකක we have to make sure that the physical inventory levels, the logistics, they are all in place. It's easy to අපිට අපේ goods track කරන්න පුළුවන්. මේ container එකෙන් අපේ මේ goods ටික ආවද physically we can even put a tracker and we can make sure that we get the inventory on time. We can place the inventory orders on time because it's all physical goods and it's easy to even do a physical check or verification. But when it comes to a service sector, how can they do it? How can they manage their supply chain? There can be instances where you don't have a physical good to check. For instance, right now I work at an IT company, okay? So, my company ke final product එක software product එක. It's not something that you and I can touch and feel and see. It's something that is completely intangible. It's a system. But to make this system, for the production of it, we have a lot of partner operations. Partner කියන්නේ තාපු මේ supplier වගේ අපිට එක එක partners suppliers ලගෙන් එක එක විදිහේ software integrate කරන්න වෙනවා අපේ final product එකට. So, how can we see whether we properly manage our inventory or our supply? Same thing here. We need to understand and we need to coordinate very well with our vendors. And we have to make sure that the digital resources are available. So, just like a physical goods manufacturing plant, we can't 100% check. But there are other methods that we can use, such as coordinating with our suppliers, making sure that we procure the right software tools, and also to manage them, manage the availability of the digital resources. So, මේ වගේ හැම key responsibility එකටම මම comparison එකක් දීලා තියෙනවා how it differs from a manufacturing, physical goods manufacturing to a service sector. Okay, ඒකත් එක්කම next we move on to another part under operations management. That is operation management trends. So this is the final part of our introduction to operations management. මෙතන අපි කතා කරන්නේ, imagine now you've been working in a factory, okay? Yeah, let's take a factory that manufactures food, maybe fast food like instant noodles and all of that. So you've been working there for quite some time and it's a very old factory where you've been there for a long time in the market, also customer knows you. You also are very familiar. So you've been there working. It's a very comfortable and you've gotten used to the job. But can you keep working the same way you worked about 10-15 years ago? Can you use physical books to record your day-to-day activities? Logbook එකක් වගේ අරගෙන ඔයාලට ලියන්න පුළුවන්. අද production එක මෙච්චරයි, this many hours were used, this many people came in, this many were absent. මේක තමයි අපේ productivity නැත්නම් efficiency level එක. No. Maybe about 30-40 years ago, they might have written all of this in a physical book, with pen and paper. But now we don't. We don't even use Excel. 10 years ago, they might have used Excel for this. Now it's completely different. There are maybe automated systems to capture this data and directly give you like a dashboard. මේ ඔක්කොම data පෙන්නලා ඒක වෙන්නේ නැති දැන් අපේ data ගන්න process එක. So, as an operations manager, you cannot continue the same way you've been doing for from the beginning. So with time, how you manage your operations, how your operations function, work will change. And there are so many factors that affect this. ගොඩක් දේවල් තියෙනවා මේකට බලපෑම් කරන. First could be there might be digital transformation. අපිට certain developments එක්ක, in the outer world we have so many developments like AI, cloud-based software, so many new developments. We will have to adopt them. We'll have to make sure that we make it a part of our job and we adopt this trend. Next is sustainability. So you all might have heard and උගලගේ අනිත් lessons වලත් ඔයගොල්ලෝ මේක අහනවා ඇති. There is a standard now in Sri Lanka called SLFRS S1 and S2 concerning sustainability. If you are a production manager, operations manager in one of the top 100 companies in Sri Lanka in this year, ඔයාට මේ sustainability කියන එක ignore කරන්න බෑ. You'll have to make sure you integrate this to every small part of your job. ඔයා ඉන්වෙන්ටරි ගන්න එකේ ඉඳලා ඔයා ගන්න ඉන්වෙන්ටරි සෝස් කරලා තියෙන්නේ in a ethical wayද කාට හරි harm වෙන විදිහට නැත්නම් illegally කපපු trees වලින් ගන්න ඒවද employees ලව exploit කරලා ගන්න ඒවද you have to make sure that is mitigated ඒව වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා because that's something that comes under sustainability and then you have to make sure ඔයාගේ production flow එකට own electricity ඔයා ගන්නේ power plant එකකින්ද වම් හරි coal burn කළාද නැත්නම් in a more eco-friendly way maybe through solar panel. So you have to make sure from the point of getting a small tiny ingredient up until the final product is going out to the factory, it's done in a sustainable way. Because now we see there are rules coming in, there are certain best practices, there are standards. So you have to make sure that you align to them. And then automation. So this is also part of the digital transformation. For you to transform your operations digitally, you have to make sure manual work adu kalla, there is a lot of automation in your factory flow. Imagine you have a competitor. ඔයාගේ production එකේම ඔයාගේ industry එකේම competitor කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා. He is using the all high end latest technology to automate collecting data. එයාගේ workersලා factory එකට එන එකේ ඉඳන් absenteeism mark කරන්නත් through fingerprint and all of that he uses that. You have somebody, another person or hire කරන්න වෙනවා to be near the door and mark absenteeism කවුද ආවේ නැත්තේ. So who's having the more cost? They'll have to pay a one-off cost for that small machinery. But then through that, ඒගොල්ලන්ට data එක ඉබේම input වෙනවා, ඒක record වෙනවා, ඒක පස්සට generate වෙලා එනවා. But ඔයාට you might have to hire someone at the door to mark it. You might need equipment in books, stationery to do that data collection. And ඔයාට තව කෙනෙක් ඕනේ වෙයි ඒ data පොතකින් computer එකට transfer කරන්න. And then you might need another person to analyze that data. So y'all are having so many extra costs and extra processes just because you didn't automate something that's very easy. So may trends with other kalenama and operations manager cannot ignore. Finally, service specific innovations. Ekeka product eකට specific ekeka jati innovations enama. For instance, api apparel industry gatto there are innovations happening where api cotton fabric එකෙන් නෙමෙයි api plastic recycle කරලා fabric හදලා ඒ වලින් apparel manufacture කරන එක. So that's a trend. It's a trend to the apparel industry, the customer wants it. So as an operations manager, you need to be able to provide for it. You need to be able to source that kind of fabric if that's what the customer wants. You need to be able to manufacture it. Maybe අපිට cotton මහන machine එකෙන් ඒ ජාතියේ fabric මහන්න බැරුව ඇති. We might need a new machine to cut it even. So as an operations manager, you need to be aware of these trends and be able to make decisions to make sure that you adopt them. Because at the end of the day, that's what the customer wants. Okay. So, just because there are so many trends that are going, here and there, හැමදාම අලුත් මොකක් හරි AI software එකක් එනවා. හැමදාම මොකක් හරි there is a new trend that's coming up, just like in TikTok and social media. We cannot change our production process. Yes, there are trends like this out there, but it's not easy for a company to specially change. It's not like, you doing a trend in social media just because it's there. No. It's complicated. It's very complex because ඔයාගේ මුළු production process එකම ඔයා සමහරට අනිත් පැත්ත හරවන්න ඕනේ නැත්නම් you have to make significant changes. ඒකට it might take time. It might be very costly. You might have to even build and hire new skills. So it takes time, it's complicated, and it's costly. So because of these reasons, ඔයාට එන හැම trend එකක්ම as an operations manager, you cannot implement or adopt. You have to evaluate. ඔයා බලන්න ඕනේ ඔයාගේ කම්පැනි එකට, ඔයාගේ ප්‍රොඩක්ෂන් එකට, ඔයාගේ ප්‍රොඩක්ට් එකට මේක ගැලපෙනවද? මේක ඇත්තටම සුදුසුයිද? මම ගන්න මේක ගත්තොත් මට බෙනිෆිට් එකක් තියනවද? For that we have something called a matrix to evaluate operations management trends. අපි බලන්න ඕනේ each and every trend එකක් analyze කරන්න මොකක්ද අපිට ගන්න පුළුවන් gain එක. අපේ කාර්යක්ෂමතාවය කොච්චර වැඩි වෙයිද? මොන જાතියේ මොන විදිහෙන්ද ඒක වෙනස් වෙන්නේ? So අපි ගත්තොත් automation and robotics කියන එක maybe ඔයාගේ factory floor එකේ ඔයාට human labor අඩු කරන්න පුළුවන්. human workforce අඩු කරොත් මොකද වෙන්නේ? එක පැත්තකින් මම හැමදාම salaries ගෙවන්න ඕනේ. I don't have to pay bonuses. I don't need to listen to their grievances, because imagine in a factory floor where there is about 150 people working, it's not easy. There might be a lot of complaints, there might be a lot of conflicts. So මේව ඔක්කොම manage කරගන්න ඕනේ on a daily basis. And people are unreliable, ඒගොල්ලන්ට අසනීප වෙන්න පුළුවන්, and especially in a time of like a pandemic, COVID වගේ තියෙද්දි, it's very easily spreadable. So people are at risk. But if you have machines can't spread diseases to each other. No? So that's another cost or a drawback. So you have to see, okay, if I bring automation or some sort of robotic process, what are my benefits? What are my gains? Will it increase my speed, my production, reduce the errors or mistakes? You have to evaluate that. Then you have to see, yes, මට මේ වගේ benefits, gains තියෙනවා. But ඒක කොහොමද මගේ profitability එකට impact වෙන්නේ? Is there a big impact, or is it just something minor, and at the end of the day එකෙන් මට ලොකු benefit එකක් එන්නේ නැද්ද කියලා? So you have to understand what is the potential impact to profitability. And then you need to see how complex is it. ඒක මට දවසෙන් දෙකෙන් implement කරන්න පුළුවන් දෙයක්ද? නැත්නම් will it take a long time, a lot of cost and a lot of changes? ඉතින් ඔය complexity එකත් evaluate කරන්න ඕනේ. So එහෙම this table will give you a bit of an understanding. මේ table එකේ මම examples අරගෙන ඔයාලට explain කරලා තියෙනවා. For instance, now if you take automation and robotics, we will take the example of Amazon. So Amazon වගේ company එකට where they have so much of warehouses, is automation something that's actually beneficial? Yes, right? They might have huge warehouses with a lot of products stored in different kinds. So they might need to understand, or they might need to quickly identify where each and every product is. Okay, සමහරවිට store කරලා තියෙන එක products එක තැන්වල customer ගේ orders හොයාගන්න බැරි වෙන්න පුළුවන්. And if a person was put to it, මිනිස්සෙක්ව ඒකට allocate කරොත් එයා දවසින් දවස ගිහින් box එකෙන් box එක බලන්න ඕනේ. But if there is automated system with a QR code where you scan the QR code and you place that box in there, then ඔයා දන්නවා මේ box එක කොහෙද තියෙන්නේ කියලා. You just have to go and check in your computer. So in a case like that, your labor cost is reduced. You can do the delivery very fast. There is a lot of efficiency. So in that case, maybe it's beneficial to implement an automation process. But before, even in the exam, even in the case study, you get a question to implement, or they tell you that this kind of trend is going on. Operations managers of the other industries are adopting it. නැත්නම් ඔයාගේ manager මොයාගේ boss මෑවිලා කියනවා, look here, there is something like this, what shall we do කියලා. You cannot just go ahead and say, yes, this is something that we have to implement, this is how we implement it. No. You have to make sure you talk about this matrix, and you talk how you decide, or you analyze the efficiency gain, possible efficiency gain, what is the impact to profitability, how complex is the implementation. You have to discuss each and every trend across these three areas, and then you have to come up with a conclusion. So this is something very important, especially if you get a question to analyze or evaluate an operations management trend, or a trend related to operations. So make it a calling. In this table, I've given some of the examples or some of the features of each and every possible or each and every famous trend for operations management. So you all can go through this and understand how different trends or what are the features of each and every trend. Okay. With that, we come on to the second part of our first lesson, which is on to the core concepts in operations management. Okay, so what are these core concepts of operations management? අපි බලමු ඊට කලින් පොඩි දෙයක්. අපි කතා කරා කලින්ම initially we spoke about operations management. එහෙම නැත්නම් in Sinhala we can say මෙහෙයුම් කළමනාකරණය. And in the previous lesson we spoke that it has 4 key activities or 4 key steps that it involves when it comes to operations management. And very briefly, හරිම summarize විදිහට අපි ඉගෙන ගත්ත operations management කියන්නේ how a company uses its resources or the inputs and convert it into goods or services through a value addition process. And මේ value addition process එක තමයි අපි operations management නැත්නම් මෙහෙයුම් කළමනාකරණය කියලා ඉගෙන ගත්තේ. And if you all remember, we learned 4 key activities. පළවෙනි එක තමයි planning. සැලසුම් කරනවා. This was the first activity under operations management. Next, we had organizing. අපි plan කරනවා අපේ resources, අපිට ඕන දේවල්, and then අපි සංවිධානය කරනවා. We organize the resources to the way we want to make sure that the final outcome is achieved. Then we direct. Third එක තමයි directing. අපි plan කළා මදි, අපිට ඕන විදිහට ඒවා organize කළා මදි, අපි ඒක අධීක්ෂණය කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ organize කරපු විදිහට ඒ දේවල් වෙනවද? නැත්නම් ඒක improve කරන්න මොකද කරන්න ඕනේ? And finally, we need to control. පාලනය කරන්න ඕනේ අපි implement කරපු processes. So these are the 4 key activities under operations management. So this is just a recap of what we learned in the last lesson. And today we are learning a new concept or new term called operations excellence. ඔක්කොම එක ළඟින් යන වචන වගේ. So let's see what's the difference. Yes, operations management is across 4 activities: planning, organizing, directing, and controlling. That will help to efficiently and effectively achieve the operational goals. Manada operational goals to finally give a finished output or good or a service. ඒක කරන්න අපිට තියෙන 4 key activities. So මොකක්ද මේ operational excellence කියන්නේ? ඒ කියන්නේ අපිට මේ දෙන activities we have to make sure we do it efficiently. අපිට අපි එක කාර්යක්ෂමව and make දෙවැනි එක effectively. අපිට ඕනේ නිවැරදි outcome එක තියෙනවද? And then reliably. අපි මේ කරන process එක අපිට පුළුවන් උපරිම කාර්යක්ෂමතාවයෙන් කරනවද? And ඒ අපි කරන එකේ නිවැරදි බලපෑම, is it effective තියෙනවද? And ඒක රඳා පවතිනවද? කාලයක් පවතිනවද? නැත්නම් ඉක්මනට කැඩෙන්න බිඳෙන්න බලනවා. So we have to make sure that all of these activities are efficient, effective, and reliable. And that is what is called operational excellence. Okay. So that's the difference between operations management and operations excellence. And whenever you all get a question talking about them, please don't get yourself confused. There are 2 things, but that are very much connected. Okay. Now, to make sure that we do something efficiently, effectively, and reliably, we have to use something called the core element framework. So there are 4 elements. අපිට aspects 4ක් තියෙනවා. අපිට ඕනම දෙයක් efficiently, effectively and reliably කරගන්න ඕන නම් අපේ operations management process එකේ, and they are all integrated. මොකක්ද මේ integrated කියන්නේ? Integrated කියන්නේ එකිනෙකට සම්බන්ධයි. අපි බලමු මොනවාද මේ core elements 4 කියලා. So, it's called the 4 core element framework for operations management. මේක තමයි මේකේ topic එක. අපේ objective එක මොකක්ද? Operational excellence. අපේ අන්තිම goal එක තමයි අපි කරන දේ අපේ operations management process එකේ we achieve operations excellence. මොකක්ද operations excellence කියන්නේ? අපි කරන දේ efficiently, effectively and reliably කරගන්න පුළුවන්. So ඒකට අපිට 4 core elements අත්‍යවශ්‍ය වෙනවා. මොනවාද? Process analysis. ඒක තමයි first element එක. අපි නිෂ්පාදනය කරන මොකක් හරි good or service එකේ පද්ධතිය. ඒක හොඳට analyze කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒක තමයි first important element එක. Next is capacity planning. මොකක්ද මේ capacity planning කියන්නේ? අපේ factory එකේ අපිට තියෙන production space එකේ ධාරිතාව අපි හරියට plan කරලා manage කරගන්න ඕනේ. Then the third element is inventory management. අපිට තියෙන resources ඒවා physical වෙන්න පුළුවන්, tangible වෙන්න පුළුවන්, නැත්නම් intangible වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒවා අපි හරියට manage කරගන්නවද කියන එක. And then finally, the most important element is quality control. අපිට ඕනේ standard එක, quality එක අපි achieve කරනවද කියන එක. So these are the 4 main important elements that will help us achieve operational excellence. අපි කරන our activities, planning, organizing, directing and controlling අපිට efficiently, effectively and reliably කරගන්න අත්‍යවශ්‍ය වෙන දේවල් 4 තමයි process analysis, capacity planning, inventory management and quality control. And ඔයගොල්ලෝ හිතනවාද ඇයි මේ 4 මම මේ circle එකකට දාලා තියෙන්නේ කියලා? මම ඉස්සෙල්ලා කිව්වා වගේ it's all integrated. ඒව ඔක්කොම එකිනෙකට සම්බන්ධයි. It's an integrated system. ඇයි අපි කියන්නේ මේ it's integrated කියලා? මොකද අපි process එක අපේ පද්ධතිය හරියට study කරලා analyze කරොත් තමයි අපිට හොයාගන්න පුළුවන්, හඳුනගන්න පුළුවන් අපේ ධාරිතාව කොහොමද හරියට utilize කරන්න කියලා. How can we utilize our capacity? So only if we do this, we can do capacity planning. Only when we plan our capacity well, we can understand අපිට කොච්චර produce කරන්න පුළුවන්ද. ඉතින් මට කොච්චර inventory ඕනේද. So it's connected again. And then only by understanding all of this, we can understand how can I control my quality. සමහර විට මගේ factory එකට එන fabric already quality effects එක එන්න පුළුවන්. මගේ production process එකේ issues නෙමෙයි, fabric එකේ factory එකට එන fabric එකේම issues තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඉතින් maybe I'll have to do a quality check at the warehouse. So you have to plan that. You have to control your quality at that. And maybe what in a dye එකේ, what in a color එකේ issues තියෙන්න පුළුවන් and not the fabric. So you'll have to check the quality there. Maybe the quality issue might come at the end of the production line. මහල ඉවරුනාට පස්සේ එන්න පුළුවන්. So then you'll have to maybe control your quality at that point. So you need to understand based on the capacity inventory where I need to, what are my control points for quality to ensure that I hit the quality that I promised my customer. So these are the 4 key elements that will help us to efficiently, effectively and reliably plan, organize, direct and control the processes in our operations management function. But මේ 4 ගැන අපි තව ටිකක් explain කරලා බලමු. නැත්නම් අපේ real life examples වලින් බලුවොත් first mark your process analysis. අපේ පද්ධතිය අපි හරියට වැඩ කරනවද කියලා study කරන එක තමයි මේ process analysis කරන්න. ඇයි අපි මේක study කරන්නේ නැත්නම් review කරන්නේ? To understand මොනවද gaps? කොහෙද අපිට wastage එක වැඩිපුරම තියෙන්නේ? කොහෙද efficiency එක අඩුම? So ඒව අඳුනගත්තට පස්සේ by identifying the gaps we can improve them. We can put the necessary actions in place to improve our workflow. And if we take an example, here among two examples, one is from McDonald's and the other is from Amazon. Now, if you look at McDonald's, only by studying the entire production process, from the point the customer gives the order until the customer gets the food, gets their fast food meal, they can understand where they can improve. How can they make sure that they reduce the waiting time for the customers? So they have to make sure they have to study the entire process. Next, capacity planning. Like I mentioned, අපිට company එකේ තියෙන ධාරිතාව, factory එකේ තියෙන ඉඩ ප්‍රමාණය වෙන්න පුළුවන්, අපේ skill එක වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒක අපි plan කරන්න ඕනේ. ඇයි අපි මේක plan කරන්නේ? Then we can understand based on the level of resources, how can we meet the current and future demand. අපිට order book එකේ එන්න පුළුවන්, හරි මේ මාසෙට අපි මෙච්චර t-shirts මහන්න ඕනේ. So when we know that, and based on the resources that we have, we can understand අපි කොච්චර utilize කරන්න ඕනද. Maybe මට මේ දවස්වල මේ orders ටික මහන්න මට shifts දෙකක් යන්න වෙයි. නැත්නම් shifts තුනක් යන්න වෙයි. So ඒක identify කරන්න we need the capacity planning. To look at an example, I've taken Toyota and Netflix. Now, for instance, Netflix gattot api, there can be times where there is peak hours and off peak hours. Maybe in a country, at the night time, it might be a peak hour where everybody is streaming to watch Netflix. So at a time like that, හැමෝම lag වෙවි තිබ්බොත් everybody is going to get frustrated with Netflix, no? So they need to expand their server capacity. So that's done through කොච්චර server capacity එකක් ඒගොල්ලෝ increase කරන්න ඕනේද කියලා එක identify කරගන්නේ through the capacity planning. Next, inventory management. Like මම කිව්වා වගේ අපිට එන inputs, අපිට එන raw materials අපි manage කරන්න ඕනේ, අපි අපේ wastage එක අඩු කරන්න ඕනේ because it's a big cost to us. So we need to ensure our ordering, storing and the use is done at a minimal waste and a cost. අපි order කරන එකේ ඉඳලා අපි එක ගබඩා කරන්න එක වෙනකන් අපි එක පාවිච්චි කරන තැනට වෙනකන් අපි wastage and cost minimize කරගන්න ඕනේ. So, if we look at an example, take Walmart, a supermarket, sort of a supermarket chain, especially in the Western countries, the US, they need to understand මොන goods da අපි ගොඩක් store කරලා තියාගෙන ඉන්න. හැම good item එකක්ම ඉක්මනට යන්නේ නැති වෙයි. Not everything might be fast moving. Some might stay in the shelf for a very long time. So they need to identify that. They need to stock their warehouses based on what are the goods that are fast moving. They need to order based on it. They need to make sure maybe there are some items that are breakable, that are very fragile. So eva they need to store it in a better way. And they can't store the same way they store a bed for the fish in the fresh fish that they sell. They do make sure they store it in a different way. If they are selling a fresh vegetable or meat items, they have to store it in a separate way. Not like the way they store, their furniture or even these canned items. So it's completely different. And then finally, quality control. This is where you understand or you identify how you can meet the defined or the promised quality standards. If we take an example, let's take Apple. They might be testing each and every iPhone before they release it to make sure that the camera quality is there. The buttons are working where they should be. The outside or the exterior looks as it was promised in the videos. So they might need to do these tests before they release the phones out to the market. So these are the 4 key elements that will help to achieve the operational excellence. මේ හතරෙන්ම අපිට achieve කරගන්න වෙන්න පුළුවන් මොකක්ද operational excellence. අපි ඉගෙන ගත්ත operational excellence කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? අපේ operations management process එකේ තියෙන key activities හතර efficiently, effectively and reliably කරන එක. Okay. With that, we move on to see මේ හතර විතරද? Are these the only things that will help us achieve operational excellence? Only these four? No, not only these four. Yes, these are the four main activities, but there are other things such as facility and location planning. Now imagine most of your suppliers are from the north of the country. ඒ පැත්තෙන් තමයි අපේ suppliers ගොඩක් පිහිටලා situate වෙලා ඉන්නේ. But your factory is somewhere in down south. That's not really ideal, right? ඔයාගේ transport cost එක වැඩි වෙන්න පුළුවන්, වෙලාව lead time එක වැඩි වෙන්න පුළුවන්, මොන හරි issue එකක්, පාරවල් වල issues ආවොත් එහෙම delay එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. So, you have to plan your location or your facility also based on other factors. You have to consider other factors probably such as the supplier availability, the skill availability. So by ensuring you properly plan the facility and location, you can again be more efficient or you can be more reliable. Again, supply chain management. So අපි කතා කරා මෙතන inventory management අපේ raw materials ගැන. But ඒක විතරක් හැද්ද අපිට එන goods ගැන විතරක් හිතුවොත් ඇතිද? No. We have to plan or we have to properly manage. අපි කල්පනා කරන්න ඕනේ අපේ suppliers ලාව. We need to make sure that we have good relationship with them. You know, maybe අපිට ටක් ගාලා order එකක් එන්න පුළුවන් සතියෙන් deliver කරන්න ඕනේ. එතකොට we need to have that good relationship with the suppliers to, you know, to go to them and be like, you know, can I have fabric, you know, really fast? I need this order. So only with that relationship, they'll also deliver to you to hit that OTD, නැත්නම් delivery timeline එක achieve කරන්න. And you have to make sure that there are smooth and timely operations. And then demand and production planning. අපේ production process එක කොච්චර හොඳට අපි plan කරලා තඩන්නේ අපිට in demand එක අපි forecast කරලා plan කරන්න බැරි නා. Especially for an apparel company, let's say, there is seasonal demand. For certain seasons, there is heavy demand for certain types of goods. Maybe අපිට winter season එකට මහද්දි the type of goods are different to the fall, නැත්නම් spring and summer. So based on these, you need to be able to plan your demand or forecast your demand. And ඒකත් එක්ක තමයි you can plan your production, you can plan your skill, you can plan your capacity, because this is important. අපි process එක කොච්චර study කරත් වැඩක් නැහැ. අපිට අපේ එන demand එක identify කරලා plan කරගන්න බැරි නම්. Then lean management. You all might have heard. This is a process used to continuously reduce waste or improve any production process, any factory flow, any operations. To continuously reduce waste, we can use lean production methods. So this is also something important that will help us achieve the operational excellence. Okay. With that, we move on to the next part of the lesson, or the final part for today, which is types of production. So, අපි ඉගෙන ගත්ත production process එක ගැන, ඒක improve කරන්න කොහොමද, ඒක කොහොමද අනිත් functions වලට connect වෙන්නේ. දැන් අපි ඉගෙන ගන්නවා මොන ජාතිය production ද, නැත්නම් what are the different types or methods of production that can occur or that can happen in a company. And as an operations manager, you might have to make the decision, what type of production can I use for this product or this customer? And what is the best production method for my company? So to understand that, now we're going to learn what are the types of production methods. So there are 4 types actually: job production, batch production, contract manufacturing, and flow production. අපි බලමු මොකක්ද මේ job production කියන්නේ. So job production කියන්නේ we customize the product. Customer අපිට ඇවිල්ලා requirement එක කිව්වම තමයි අපි customer ඕන විදිහට we do the production. So the production process is entirely customized, because the final output or the final product that you produce may differ from customer to customer. You take a salon, you know, හැමෝටම එකම hairstyle එක දෙන්න බෑනේ. They can't be advertising saying we only do this hair color and haircut. Come to us to only get this done. No, right? The customer goes, the customer says, this is what I want, this is what I want. One person will be like, I want to turn my hair into blue. The person will be like, no, I want to cut it short. So customer to customer, the requirement changes, the final output that they're to deliver changes. So their production needs to cater to each and every customer's requirement. A customer again customer වෙනස් වෙන requirements වලට අපේ production process එක වෙනස් වෙලා හැඩගැන් වෙන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕනේ. So that's job production. මේක කරන්න අපිට මොනවද ඕනේ? We need skilled employees. අපිට එක දෙයක් කරන්න පුළුවන් employee කෙනෙක් වැඩක් නැහැ. We need an employee that can perform various tasks, has a variety of skills. If I have my salon and I'm trying to plan my production, මම ගත්තොත් මේ hair එක color කරන්න පුළුවන් විතරක් කෙනෙක් වැඩක් නැහැ. Because he needs to be able to color the hair, he needs to be able to do the different styles, maybe even like makeup skills, because this job will differ from customer to customer and we cannot exactly plan. අද අපි forecast කරනවා අපිට මේ වගේ customers ලේ. We can't plan, especially when it comes to this kind of production. Next is batch production. So this is where you produce limited quantity. සීමිත ප්‍රමාණයක් අපි produce කරනවා, but they all look the same, identical. So it's not just one or two, it's some amount, it's a considerable amount, but the good thing is they are identical. But again, there's a drawback here because maybe when the next batch comes, the requirement might be different. Again, they might have to change the skill, the equipment to suit the next batch. So that's when it comes to batch production. Batches වලින් තමයි අපේ production process එක වෙනස් වෙන්නේ. Next we have contract manufacturing where it might be a one-off thing. හැමදාම එන්නේ අපිට batches විදිහටවත් එකක් විදිහටවත්, but it might be in a large quantity. ලොකු quantity එකකින් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, but it's a one-off thing where maybe another company is outsourcing. ඒ production එකේ වෙලාවට අපිට outsource කරනවා. A good example here is recently they published the new jersey, right, for our cricket team. So that's a contract manufacturing for a manufacturing company to produce the t-shirt with an exact style and design for a short period of time. But it might be done in huge quantities, the quantity might be huge, but it's a one-off thing. Next is flow production. It is where continuously දිගටම standardized එක ජාතිය product එකක් process වෙන එක. So that's flow production. අපි මේකට කියනවා අපහු mass production. Mass කියන්නේ මහා ප්‍රමාණයේ. So mass production. මහා පරිමාණයේ නිෂ්පාදනය. Okay. So next we have something called the production methods decision matrix. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි කියනවා දැන් අපිට මෙන්න හතරක් තියෙනවානේ production process, and we are only going to talk about these three: job production, batch and flow, because this is something one-off based on the customer. It might come, it might not come, but looking at these three, if you are an operations manager, you have to decide මේ product එකට මේ company එකට ගැලපෙන්නේ which type of production method, and how can I make that decision? You have to use something called the production methods decision matrix. මේ matrix එක use කරන්න ඕනේ. මොකක්ද මේ matrix එකේ තියෙන්නේ? There are two aspects, two axes. First is production volume, next is product customization. අපිට දේවල් දෙකක් මත තමයි depend වෙන්නේ මොන ජාතියේ production method එක අපි use කරනවාද කියලා. පළවෙනි එක තමයි කොච්චර ප්‍රමාණයක් කොච්චර volume එකක් අපි produce කරන්න ඕනද. Next කොච්චර customization එකක් දෙන්න ඕනද. product එක වෙනස් වෙයිද එකින් එකට නැත්නම් batch එකෙන් batch එකට නැත්නම් is the same product continuously. So based on those two, production volume and customization, you can decide whether you should use job production, batch production, or flow production. So අපි ගත්තොත් අපේ customer ට ඕනේ එකම ජාතිය product එක and we need it in massive mass production. Then we can use something called flow production. මේ volume එකත් high, product customization එකත් low. එකම product එක. Example is Coca-Cola. The Coca-Cola bottle is the same across from Jaffna to Gaul. It's the same Coca-Cola bottle that's being sold. The taste is the same, the look is the same, the volume is the same, it's the same. No difference, very hardly. So then there is not much customization. Matama kela rose Coca-Cola bottle ekak egolo produce karanne nane. They won't give you it in a different kind of bottle either. It's the same bottle that you and I, everybody has to purchase. So it's produced in mass quantities. Maha parimana quantities වලින් එක produce කරනවා with very low customization. So එහෙම product එකකට they can use flow production. Next, maybe volume එකත් එච්චර නැහැ and customization එකත් ගොඩාක්ම it's not highly customized from customer to customer but maybe from time to time. So it's somewhere in the middle, then you can use batch production. Where batch eකට you can change the output, how the good or service looks like or what the good or service is, but not from one product to another, but for a considerable quantity. ගොඩාකුත් නෙමෙයි, එකකුත් නෙමෙයි, it's somewhere as a considerable batch. But if our volume is low and customization is high, now I don't go and be like, salon එකට ගියාම 15 දෙනෙක් විතර කොණ්ඩේ කපන්න කියන්නේ. And for me it's just one person, right? I can't bring everybody at home to cut their hair. It's just me who I want to get a haircut. So it's just one, not a huge quantity. So the volume is very low, but customization is very high. I might need it in a completely different way to compare to the customer who came before me. So for a production like that, we can use job production. So you can talk about this matrix and the two aspects, production volume and customization. Then you have to make a decision on what type of production method you have to use. So when talking about this in the case study, you cannot just simply say yes or no and just talk about the pros and cons. You have to talk about this matrix. May matrix එක අපි මොනවද consider කරන්නේ? Volume එකයි, customization එකයි, ඒක වැඩි අඩු වෙනකොට මොන ජාතියේ production method එකද use කරන්නේ? You have to talk about all of it. Okay, with that, we come to a very real life example. For each of these 4 elements we learned, and before that, කලින් එකට ගියොත් අපි චූටි දෙයක් mention කරන්න ඕනේ. අපි choose කරගන්න production method එකට අනුව අපේ අර කලින් ඉගෙන ගත්ත 4 core elements වෙනස් වෙනවා. Process analysis, අපේ පද්ධතියේ study එක, ධාරිතාව, අපේ inventory එක manage කරගන්න විදිහ, quality standards control කරන විදිහ, ඒ හැම එකක්ම අපේ production method එකෙන් production method එකට වෙනස් වෙනවා. අපි ගත්තොත් example එකක් like Cartier. So Cartier is a very well known production or jewelry or a watch brand. Ultra luxury, very expensive. So for something like this, it's job production. If somebody wants to get an engagement ring produced, it will be customized. So for a brand or company like Cartier, they use job production. So how do they do the process analysis? Each watch or each piece of jewelry is designed by hand, and also they have to analyze, they have to study each and every step individually. The way one engagement ring is made might not be the way the other engagement ring is made, because maybe use කරන gemstone එක වෙනස් ඇති, එකනේ gold වෙන්නේ නැති, අනිත් එක silver වෙන්නේ නැති. So because it's different from customer to customer, they have to study each and every step of each and every process. They cannot just study one and be like, මේක අපි අනිත් ඔක්කොමඩම implement කරමු. No. But if you take a company like Nike, where they might, launch a new style, new seasonal look, it is more than one, but ඒක නෙමෙයි හැමදාට මේගොල්ලෝ produce කරන්නේ, but for a short period of time. So maybe like a batch. So company like Nike is using batch production, where maybe ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ spring collection එකට ඒගොල්ලෝ different type of sneakers or t-shirt එකක් produce කරනවා, maybe with a different type of stitch or a finish or maybe like a graphic, but it's not for a lot but for a considerable amount. So they'll follow the same process or same steps for that batch. And if you take something like Coca-Cola, forgive the spelling mistake, they can use the same process continuously to fill the bottles, to cap it, to label it, and even pack the bottles. The same process can be used. So like that, the process analysis element differs from job production to batch production to flow production, which is again mass production. So rather than නිකන් මොහේ ඔයගොල්ලන්ට දෙන්න නැතුව මේක මෙහෙම තමයි job production, batch production වෙනස් වෙන්නේ කියලා, I've taken examples from real life companies to help you all understand how each and every element change based on the type of production method you use. Now, after looking at what type of production method really suits you, you'll have to also consider what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages of each and every type of job production. Maybe this might suit you best. ඔයාගේ company එකේ requirement එක ගන්නකොට job production වෙනත් use කරන්න පුළුවන් හොඳම එක. But you as an operations manager, you need to identify හරි මේක use කරාම මොනවාද මට තියෙන advantages. මට customer ට ඕන දේම දෙන්න පුළුවන්. When I satisfy my customer by giving him exactly what I want, then it will build brand loyalty. And also, since I'm giving a customized service, I can ask for premium prices because there's no standard, right? මම ගිහිල්ලා ඉල්ලන haircut එකේ requirement එකට he can give me a price because I ask for different things that that there is no standard for. But what are my drawbacks? Maybe I have a high production cost and mata very skilled laborers ලෝන හින්දා මම ඒගොල්ලන්ට maybe I'll have to pay more. It might be really hard for me to find them, and also it can be time consuming and complex. So for each and every type of production, you can understand what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages. Now, if you take batch production, yes, it offers both flexibility, මට batch එකෙන් batch එකට output එක වෙනස් කරන්න පුළුවන්, and I can be efficient because I can have economies of scale. මොකද මම produce කරන එකක් දෙකක් නෙමෙයි. I'm producing a considerable quantity, so maybe I can get a bulk price from my supplier and enjoy economies of scale. And I can also maybe serve different market segments. මගේ customer එකම කෙනා වෙන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. මම batch එකෙන් batch එකට මාරු කරන හින්දා I might be able to cater to different types of customers. But what are my drawbacks? Can I change and set up my machines, my labor every time I change the batch? Is it going to be very costly? How can I schedule it? Can there be time, like idle time, where my machinery is not working, my people are just waiting when I shift from batch to batch? So that's also something I have to consider. Now, if you look at contract manufacturing, yes, it has low production costs and it will help me get specialized skills and technology, but can I really control the quality? Because I'm giving my production to some other company. So can I say 100% guarantee my quality? And there can be risks of supply chain disruption. A company එකට මොකක් හරි ප්‍රශ්නයක් වුණොත් my entire production is down. And then I'll have to depend on an external third-party company. So that's a drawback of contract manufacturing. Finally, we have flow production. Yes, අපි ගත්තොත් per unit cost එක හරිම අඩුයි. ඇයි machines වෙනස් වෙන්නේ නැහැ, මිනිස්සු වෙනස් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. It's the same machines, same scale, producing the same product, so very low unit cost as you have high economies of scale and අපි එකම දේ produce කරන හින්දා over time අපිට identify කරන්න පුළුවන් මොනවාද අපෙන් වෙන gaps, මොනවාද අපෙන් වෙන wastages, and you can increase efficiency. And also එකම product එක නිසා අපිට easily අපේ quality control කරන්න පුළුවන්. Quality checks කරන්න පුළුවන් because it's the same product. But I'll be producing the same product every day, you know. My customers will get tired of me because I'm not very flexible, and I might need a lot of investment because maybe I'm using a lot of high-end technology, and maybe I am unable to adapt to change. You know, after a while, people might not like the product that I'm producing because I am having a very standard, very fixed factory flow. I can't change quickly. So these are the advantages and disadvantages across the 4 production methods. So with that, we come to the end of the second part of our first lesson, which is on the core concepts of operations management, and there is one tiny bit that we'll be covering in the next lesson.